Welcome to Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real, where we introduce corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner and participate with their great idea in our guest blog, found on shareyourstories.online. Our guest joins us today from Hamilton, Ontario. Jen Spinner has a full-service design agency who believes your marketing assets should do more than just look great. Let's hear how our brand image should start new conversations that drive results to help our businesses thrive. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Jen Spinner.
Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here.
You know, I had a wonderful moment this morning when I was reading your story, and you had a great experience in working with Kate Spade that I'm sure was pivotal in your decision to jump into entrepreneurship. So share with us how that evolved.
Sure. It's really a testament to the importance of doing personal work that makes you excited. So basically, I was doing these paper sculptures, and there was I don't know if they still do it, but the Gladstone Hotel in Toronto used to do this installation show called Come Up to My Room. And they would take their second floor gallery, which I don't think the second floor gallery exists anymore. Yeah, but at the time they had the second floor gallery, and they would take certain rooms there and open them up for like a week or two. And then they would just turn the whole space into these like different installations. And you could apply and go. And the trick of that was that you would apply and that you would give sort of like a general concept, but they wouldn't know what it was going to be until the day of, basically.
Oh, cool.
So I applied there, and I made these mini paper fire escapes. And it was just like I was really obsessed with fire escapes at that time. And like my personal work, I was taking all sorts of photographs of them and making printmaking and anything that you can think of, I was doing with them. I was just really taken with this idea of like, fire escapes are these like, it's a retrofit. Whenever you say a fire escape, it's a retrofit to make a building like up to fire code. It's a space where you can go and unwind, a kind of an in-between space, which is sort of what art is and design is. It's like there's a quote by Carl Jung, which is like art is making the invisible visible, right? Of just sort of like the ineffable, making it something tangible.
Sure.
So anyway, paper fire escapes. I made these paper fire escapes and just was like, I just did it because it was something that was inside me that I wanted to share with people. And it was a great success, and I was so happy with it. And I took some photos of it and I put it up on my website with all my other work. And then just honestly, with the power of SEO, like I think the creative director at Kate Spade at the time, like just typed in paper fire escape or fire escape. And an article came up that was written about me that linked, because I'd won a little award for it. So it linked to my website, and then they reached out, and I thought it was a joke because it was just, sometimes you get like a scam email or
can't believe it.
Yeah, to be savvy. But no, it was real. So basically they asked me to pitch a concept that was, and the whole idea is that fire escapes were in line with their summer campaign. And so I basically pitched the idea of like, what if we take these mini fire escapes but make them big? And it was for their flagship store on Madison Avenue. And yeah, so I pitched and I got it. And then I made I made it here like I was living in Toronto at the time. I made it in Toronto, and then they were shipped to New York, and they were installed there. And I was eventually able to go and see them in person. And yeah, it was lovely. And at the time, it was just like, it happened. In retrospect, it happened very easily, but it probably took like from beginning to end, like a few months to figure it all out. So,
but talk about serendipity though. I mean, we never know, here we are as entrepreneurs, we post all kinds of things on social, right? We post a little bit about our work. We post testimonials from our clients or customers. We're always trying to tell a story. And here you are you were sharing your work, not so much in a social media platform, but just proud of what you'd accomplished. And it was something that you had made a connection with in terms of subject matter. And what's the odds, right, of somebody having a similar sort of concept? But so doing the art sculpture is just one of the components that you provide, but it does speak to your creativity also, obviously.
Yeah, and I think also like the power of brand in the sense of
Yes,
like this is
yes,
something that I did that was very connected to who I am.
sure,
And then because that was, I mean, people talk a lot about authenticity and like believing someone, it's like you just know it, right? So
right,
yeah, to me, once I got that job, I was working full time in an agency. So I did that whole Kate Spade, like, as a freelance project. Like, I think I took a week vacation when in the the peak of doing that. And I was just sort of thinking, oh, you know what? I think I would be a better service if I was independent and
right,
serving clients directly, because then I could be able to take on like a variety of projects. So the paper sculptures are things that get people super excited about what I do, and they sort of act like marketing for the rest of my services. So,
sure,
brand identity, like marketing design, I do, like you say, like full service in terms of like, basically it can help you with whatever you need.
sure.
But yeah, the paper sculptures remain like a aspect of my practice that people get very excited about. And I'm very happy to talk about it. I have a few here that show up really nicely on screen. So this is one, like a
Oh, that's
little
great.
prototype of the last work that I did. I did a little like these centerpieces for the Walrus Gala last year. And then when I moved to Hamilton, this is a paper vase, so you can kind of see there's like you can see
Wow.
inside of it.
Yeah,
I had a paper flower workshop that I created just to network. I was just like, I'm new to the city. I want to be able to meet new people, like-minded people. And so I made these paper flower workshops. So yeah, it really gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I've been feeling this for a while that I want to be on my own. And yeah, and so I just did it. It was just, I
good for
think
you.
if I didn't have that experience, I think I probably would have ended up in the same spot anyways, but maybe it would have taken me longer to do that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
being an entrepreneur and having your own practice, do you ever
Mhm.
collaborate with other like-minded individuals? Because, we often talk about we can't do everything, right? We need some motivation, we need inspiration, we need to be able to connect with like-minded individuals. So, in
Mhm.
terms of your own practice, do you collaborate with other creative people, or what do you use for inspiration when you're working with a new client?
Sure. So, kind of two separate but
Two
related
parts.
questions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I love collaboration. Like I think of my relationships with my clients as a collaboration, right? So it's less like I'm making commercial art, right? So it's like I'm working with the client to understand like their needs and to suggest things that maybe they haven't thought about and to advise about strategy as well, right?
Sure.
And then in terms of execution, I try to bring in collaborators as much as I can, in the sense that like that's my model of, I assemble, freelance teams so that my clients get the agency treatment without the agency
Overhead.
overhead. Exactly.
Right.
And so without the agency overheads, the collaborators, right? And like I love like having partnerships with other creatives, in the sense that like I think as much as I think of myself as a generalist, there's so much out there, right? So it's like
Right.
for example, like I'm collaborating with a UX web designer right now on a rebrand and doing some like UX screens for an app that's, wants to get made. The client wants to make this app. So yeah, and I really appreciate other people having their own specialties and then being able to have like the alchemy of like having the right specialties come together, and
Sure.
then overseeing, like making sure that it's like on strategy and that it's meeting the client's needs in the best way. In terms of inspiration, I mean, I love nature. So it's like nature is the place where I go to get recharged. And it's just like anywhere I look in nature is like it's the ultimate, in color balance, the ultimate in design. Like it's just there's something so simplistic about, actually looking at a flower and then realizing like, oh my God, there's millions of hues in this one flower,
So
And so
true.
like I try to bring that idea of simplicity into my work, inspired by nature. And then yeah, I'm constantly like collecting. So it's like I'm collecting links to websites. I'm collecting like articles that inspire me, other creators that are doing things that I wish I could do. You name it. It's like, I think it's kind of like the serendipity of like getting the right job at the right time.
Sure.
You never know where, like, I have like folders and folders of like screen grabs. It's like, you never know where I'm going to use like specific inspiration. So if I like
Sure.
something today, I might use it in 2 years, like for a brand design so yeah.
So, and I know that you work with a number of different clients and across the various different industries. So,
Mhm.
for our viewing and listening audience who may be listening to our conversation or seeing us on video, who would be your ideal client? I'm sure it's not the industry so much that you're interested in working with. Is it the company or the people, or is it the inspiration of the work that they're looking for?
Okay, so my ideal client
Mhm.
is, yeah, as of late, I've found like the most value that I can offer for clients is kind of like becoming like their de facto in-house designer without having the budget to hire an in-house designer, in the
Sure.
sense that like I really like having long-term relationships with clients, and I really like being able to listen deeply to what they're telling me about themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and I find that I'm better at, delivering those services when it's a longer relationship. So
Sure.
like for example, like I'm working right now with the Directors Guild of Canada in Ontario. So they represent like all kinds of professions, including creative, in the film and television industry. So I've been working with them for several years. And so when they have things like, oh, we want to rebrand like this particular piece of what we do, like I get them. So
Sure.
I like having that ease. So working with more like, institutions and companies, not that I wouldn't work with a small business, but I do find that that's the direction that I tend to be, that I'm headed in and want to be. So
Sure. Well, I think,
yeah.
other small businesses probably need you more on a project per project basis. And probably their needs are not the demand that they have for your services is maybe sporadic rather than, every few months having a new project that you might like to be able to help them with. So I do appreciate the fact that, you're looking for those sort of medium to large size organizations or institutions that have their breadth of work is a little bit more expansive. So it gives you more creativity, right? Opportunities for creativity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
hmm
have you found that the transition from going from, your job in an agency to being your own agency, has there been a certain quality or a certain skill that you took with you from your corporate life that's been extremely beneficial that you've really leaned in on as an entrepreneur?
Relationship building.
Yeah.
I it's pretty basic. Everybody talks about it, but I think I realized how important that is
Yeah.
once I went out on my own, because initially I didn't do any advertising. It was all referrals, and it was all based on all of the, career contacts that I'd had before. And it's amazing, like just in terms of who remembers me. And then that person ends up being a bit of a champion for me and my services within their organization or their own business. And honestly, I don't take that lightly. It's just like having that trust that I built up, and it's not like a calculated thing. It's more about, us all being humans working together, and like it happens to be in business, but um I don't think it really matters in terms of it being like a business or personal relationship. I think it's all the
Sure.
same.
Yeah.
So when I have those nice connections with people, uh yeah, and I try to do the same for folks as well, of like, oh, I
Sure.
remember that person. Like
Yeah.
I'd love to help that person out. Like, oh, you're
Introduce
looking
them.
for email marketing. Like, I know a good email marketer, like
Right.
those sorts of things. So the relationship building and the connecting, it's key. So yeah.
So in terms of connecting and having your own, roster or Rolodex of individuals that is becomes reciprocal referrals, what would you say has been the best source of that networking opportunity? I mean, we've all been doing networking online as of late, and I don't
Mhm.
think that the combination between in person and online is going to go away because I think there's, certain time factors and elements that come into play that just suit
Mhm.
our scheduling a little more
Yeah.
explicit. But if you had to share a piece of advice for our viewing and listening audience in terms of networking, because I do agree with you, relationship building, I think, is going to be the way in which we all not just thrive, but succeed in business. So if you were to provide one sort of opportunity that you've been presented with in terms of networking, what organization or how do you find the networking experience to be for you yourself in building that roster of client referrals?
A big question. Well, I mean, opportunities like, like what you're doing, Trish, in terms of, I think what you're doing is super simple, but then also very clever. So I love just being able to participate. Like, it's like, oh, I have an opportunity to participate in networking that somebody has built for me. Like, okay, I'm going to do that. So
Sure.
just the having a bit of courage to put myself out there and, have some eyeballs on me and sort of just being like, okay, it makes me a little nervous, but I'm still going to do it.
Right.
So that's something that's just kind of built into networking. One thing I've been listening to like going to some workshops on networking and sort of thinking about that networking is a muscle. So it's like, you use it or you lose it, right? And
Very
then
true.
with practice, you build up that muscle and then it doesn't become so scary anymore.
Right.
So yeah, and the other thing, when the event that you and I met at, Trish, uh, was a networking event for, female entrepreneurs. And I walked into that. That was the first event ever that I walked into. And I was like, actually, I'm not very nervous. And
Oh, good.
I bet that more people here are more nervous than I am. So I'm going to come into it being like, I'm going to be the person that like helps other people be less nervous. And then that just really helped me build it. It was just like this really nice cyclical moment for me. So it's also just sort of nice to remember it's like everybody's nervous. Like it
Yeah,
is
for
a
sure.
awkward, thing. But it doesn't have to be, and just to practice it. And in terms of you know, building up the client funnel and all that sort of thing, I think getting some clear messaging is helpful. So having that stuff, figured out ahead of time, but also saying it out loud helps it evolve. The
That's so
more
true.
yeah, the more I say it out loud, the easier it gets to say. And then I can see in real time what people are absorbing. If I'm saying a sentence that people are sort of like, look at me like, I don't get it, then I just sort of like remember that and refine it for
Sure.
next time. And
Right.
yeah, it's all practice. It doesn't have to be perfect. So
That's so
yeah.
true. And I think as creatives and people in business, sometimes we bog ourselves down with the idea of giving a 150% great first impression. And,
Mhm.
one of the reasons why we have this show and we call it Keeping It Real is because we're trying to introduce the person behind the logo, right? I mean,
Mhm.
from your perspective, you spend a lot of time on front facing visuals that give people a brand voice and an opportunity to make connections with potential clients. But you're also introducing that person that's behind the logo too, right? And a little bit of bringing their personality into the creative space.
Absolutely. And it's very classic. Like I love doing it for other people, but then when it comes to do it for myself, I'm just like, oh, okay. Like all the advice I'm giving to my clients, like I also need to take pieces of that for me too.
Right. We have
Right.
to
So
practice what we preach.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we do in the guest blog is we ask folks to share some words of advice. So, why don't we wrap up our conversation today with you giving us some insight into why these words are so important to you? And your words are relationship first, be you, and admire beauty.
hmm it's I had difficulty just having 3 words because I'm chatty. So relationships first. I mean, yeah, like I already mentioned in the sense of
Yeah,
like, what's the point otherwise? It's like if I'm not working with people who I like, if I'm not working with businesses that I care about, for me, it's not worth it. So
sure.
I really focus on, building relationships with clients who then could refer me to other clients and then other people that are in my space as well. So other designers, other people who are even doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, like maybe they'll have, you know, too much work one day, or it's not quite the right fit, and then they can refer me and vice versa. So,
Sure.
um, does that answer the question
Yeah,
about why I picked that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
absolutely.
Great.
And what
And the
about
next
admire
piece,
beauty? Yeah, because you've got be you, which I'm assuming is all about authenticity, right? Because I mean,
yeah. And confidence, like, I think just sort of like all the things that we tell, like all the things that we're told when we're kids, which is like, there's nobody like you, you
Mhm.
know, and as much as, you know, maybe thinking that you're too special maybe isn't the thing that I'm going for, but it's like, just have some confidence that like there's space for you in the world. So there's space for all of us to, you know, have enough business. Like, yeah, like maybe a little competition is healthy, but like, um, yeah, I think that's just the key to stand out, is to not be afraid to talk about the things that you want to talk about, and also like be like, oh, that part's not for me, and to trust that instinct as well in terms of like being you. And then
That's
what
very
was the last
important.
thing I
Yeah.
said?
Is admire beauty.
Admire beauty. That's how I stay in the moment. So it's like life is so busy, you know, Trish, you were talking about the reality of networking like in person versus, you know, online, and how it speaks to how busy we are, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's one of the things where it's like, if I find myself getting overwhelmed, is that I really try to like just admire whatever beauty is around. Doesn't even have to be nature, it can be anything, right? Um, and yeah, just sort of says staying present is really important for me.
You know
Yeah.
what I really love about the time that you've spent with us today, Jen, is that you've really given us some interesting things to think about. I love the pivotal moment that sort of gave you the confidence to become an entrepreneur and move from the agency space into creating your own agency. And I think you've really shared with us some of the things that are more important than the visual image, you know, some of those behind the scenes relationships that are really important. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your perspective on your own business. We certainly wish you a lot of continued success in the future.
Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. It was so nice to connect. Yeah.
To our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this edition of Keeping It Real, where we introduced you to the person behind the logo. If you'd like to connect with our guest, you'll find Jen's contact information in the description portion below. I'm Trish Tonai, author, artist, and the founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online and subscribe to our channel, Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. Thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we share another great idea.